Hello and welcome to the Evolving HubSpot Podcast by Huble Digital, a podcast where we explore the topics that matter the most in the world of HubSpot. I'm Matthew Creswick, and in this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Jim Beckham, SEO Director of Huble Digital. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
So Jim, I guess maybe to kick things off today. Now, I know you well. I've worked with you for a number of years at Huble. I actually knew you very briefly before your time at Huble, but maybe as a starting point, you can kind of enlighten, tell the listeners who Jim is, a brief overview of Jim, and kind of how have you got to this point in your career?
Yeah, so I've been working for Huble since 2015. I've been working in SEO since about 2012, and I think slightly different to a lot of people who come into the SEO world. I'm not a developer, I'm not a coder. I came into it from PR. So my background is very much content focused. I did English and film at uni, and it was very much around kind of content. And I basically got handed an SEO project and kind of told we need to work out how to do this, and so we cracked on it. And I just found it really interesting, the kind of being able to use data to understand the success of the things that are being written. And so I think since then I've kind of expanded my portfolio, and I know a lot more about technical SEO and website design and overall digital marketing. And I think that having that kind of complete overview of what makes up a website and a marketing campaign is something that I'm really passionate about, and it's more than just kind of where are we ranking on Google. So yeah, I mean, ever since I first came across HubSpot, I've been really excited about what it represents to the market, and yeah, I'm really keen to talk to you today about all things SEO and HubSpot, really.
Awesome, sounds good. And yeah, I mean, as you've referenced it, I guess an interesting track into SEO coming from a PR background as opposed to a website development coder kind of marketing agency background. And an interesting tale for those who didn't know, kind of Huble and obviously Bob Dearsley, who was kind of founder of B2B Marketing Lab, and Huble obviously came from a PR background. So the way that we work as a company, and even to this day, kind of still has that kind of content, inbound marketing, PR-led background, as opposed to that kind of development, background at its source, which is interesting. But Jim, I guess today, so as you referenced, we're gonna be obviously focusing on SEO, focusing on kind of how companies can or can't use HubSpot to empower, increase effectiveness and efficiency, and ultimately how they can improve their rankings on the content they're creating. I guess first things first, my question for you is over the last few years, kind of seeing forums and LinkedIn posts and this kind of thing, Facebook groups, whether HubSpot CMS is referenced as a CMS to be used to put your website in, to migrate over from something like WordPress. HubSpot tends to get a lot of hate in responses and comments and this kind of thing. Why is this, and what is your view on why HubSpot gets the amount of hate it does?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've seen that perspective in SEO forums, in any kind of discussion of when people are saying, what CMS should I use for my website, or I'm thinking of HubSpot, should I build my website in HubSpot? And I think that in those instances, those SEO specialists are really only looking at it from their bubble. They're basing it on things like the kind of code, how much code is going on a page, how quickly the page might load. We know that Core Web Vitals is a reasonably new metric that Google's using to assess that overall page experience. But I think that looking at purely from a code perspective and from a efficiency perspective in that respect is very limiting, because there's so much of the kind of SEO role that the HubSpot CMS kind of handles without needing to go and do it yourself manually. And so, some of the things that we're hopefully going to talk about today are just sort of the wider benefits of the HubSpot CMS that impact an SEO department's role without needing for them to manage every single asset, every single individual part of the website. The kind of quick answer is that I think HubSpot enables a lot of the basic SEO tasks to be ticked off, and that essentially frees up teams like mine to focus on much more advanced, much more high-level strategies, rather than spending all their days fixing broken links or adding titles to pages and meta descriptions that are the right length, that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay, and I mean, having obviously been someone who has used HubSpot CMS for, God, it's probably pushing 10 years now, or at least, what was the landing pages tool before the CMS launched. I think the focus that you've highlighted is the ability for someone like me to run SEO, if that could be a term, out of HubSpot without needing development knowledge or to be a coder to try and kind of do things like language tags, that kind of stuff. So ultimately, I think what you're saying is it allows the marketer to run SEO as opposed to maybe for that marketer to have access to a developer or actually have the knowledge of a developer themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you compare WordPress to HubSpot, yes, you've got a WordPress template might be thinner and quicker to load, and kind of the code might be more condensed, but the system for the marketer's day-to-day job role would be that they would then have to get a plugin like Yoast, install that so that they can edit titles and meta descriptions and optimize for a keyword. They would need to get a redirect plugin to manage redirects. There's all these extra little plugins that they would need to put in to build that overall solution, whereas in HubSpot it's all built in. It tells you exactly how long your title should be. You've got a page analysis tool which will kind of give you a tick box of all the things you should be thinking about. And I suppose it's changing it from an SEO person having to dictate that entire process and train every single person that will be building the site, or taking all of that work on board themselves. You've got marketing team members doing those basics as part of their day-to-day role. We actually ran a webinar a couple of years ago, I think now, where we had Luke Summerfield from HubSpot, and he talked about the difference between HubSpot. I'm going to use WordPress as an example, but there's plenty of other CMSs out there with a similar situation. But essentially, HubSpot's kind of core focus is to not be some kind of cobbled together solution requiring loads of plugins, requiring loads of other bits of software for it to have all the features. Every time if they acquire a company like they have just recently, they won't just plug it in, they will build it from the ground up into the HubSpot system. And that, from Luke's webinar talked about it from a security perspective. There's all those plugins add vulnerabilities, but I think from an SEO perspective, it's more from an efficiency perspective. So all these features are critical to SEO performance, but they're already in HubSpot, rather than you having to go get a language management plugin, href lang tag deployment plugin, a sitemap, a robots.txt. All of these things are kind of within HubSpot's basic settings.
Okay, and I guess so. There's options in terms of, and there's still options now in terms of which content you can host in HubSpot and which content you decide not to. So, for example, you can still do things like host a website outside of HubSpot, but use HubSpot for the blog, or use HubSpot for your landing pages, or you can go all in with HubSpot, have your full website CMS, including blog, including landing pages, including knowledge-based articles for customer service point of view, that kind of stuff. If you're a company kind of looking or evaluating whether or not to go kind of all in, what tools in HubSpot, what kind of confidence would you give to people in terms of tools in the platform to enable you to improve, enhance your kind of SEO effectiveness? You referenced a few things there around robots.txt, href lang tags, that kind of thing. I guess, again, to my point earlier, especially for the marketer, what tools do you have in play there without needing to use any third-party plugins that may kind of cause that vulnerability in terms of security?
Yeah, so I think it covers lots of different areas. As I said before, where you'd use Yoast in WordPress, you've got on the page individual page settings. You've got sections where you fill in your title, your meta description. You've got a analysis tool where you can put in what keyword you are trying to focus a page on, and it will check, whether it's in the title, in the meta description, in your headers, in your copy. It's kind of, it's robotic. It's not as good as having a specialist look at it, but in terms of sense checking, it can flag if you've missed something. Then, as you said, you've got the more technical areas in HubSpot settings. You've got your sitemap, which is essentially like a contents page for all of the URLs, so that search engines can crawl your site. What I love about the sitemap is you don't have to manually update it. If you publish a blog post, if you publish a website page, it's automatically added to the sitemap, and then you can manually control if you want to take it out. Landing pages you have to add manually because it depends on whether you want somebody to be able to find that on Google, so that's still manual. But that efficiency of not having to have somebody do that every time, or a more junior person uploads a blog post, they don't know about sitemaps, you don't have to worry that has already been put into the system. It's there, it's automated. As you said, it's similar with canonical tags as well. It's a really important thing for managing duplicate content. Again, I see so many sites that are kind of built in custom CMSs or WordPress templates that just don't have these deployed, and it's one of our first jobs quite often after doing an SEO audit is we go and try and find a solution for that. Again, in HubSpot, it's just there, it's built in, and then there's a feature that lets you tweak it and tailor it if there are certain pages that you don't want it to have the kind of default settings. One thing as well HubSpot's also got is a SEO audit feature, so you can now run crawls of your website and audit it to see where there are gaps and where there are errors that need addressing. So yes, as I can talk about lots of different tools, I'm sure we will over the course of today, but those are just some to get you started.
But what you're highlighting, Jim, is the common theme here is the ability for the marketer to run all of the the SEO enhancements, basically any kind of information you need to give HubSpot or give Google or whichever search engine you're focusing on, in order to kind of make sure your content is being tracked and ranked correctly by search engines. It's either in HubSpot automatically, or HubSpot makes it very easy for you to edit, change, or kind of alter the tool. Now, I think for me, like a kind of like even just the ability to from an internal link point of view, the ability to not use static URLs and actually just use like a chosen page within HubSpot is an absolute game changer. It seems like a very small thing, but if as and when you want to change a URL on a website page, having to consider how many internal links you might be pushing to that page and how many of them you have to update. Whereas in a tool like HubSpot, or I'm sure other kind of CMSs have similar, where you can just choose the page and then the link to the page updates as and when the URL is updated.
You say some others, you expect other CMSs to have that, but I mean we come across some big name CMSs where like you can't even define the URL. Like if you want to folder your website, that enforces what the URL will be. And so you've got no customization, no kind of flexibility there at all. Whereas, on, as you said, on the flip side, HubSpot is flexible. We don't want to be changing URLs that often, but these things come up. But if you've got a page with 1,000 different internal links pointing to it, and you change that URL, you don't have to go manually into every single internal link and update it if you've set it up correctly, because HubSpot will just automatically update all of those internal links. And that's, for enterprise websites, that's a massive amount of time and money saved.
Yeah, and I suppose especially to your reference, these enterprise websites are ones with hundreds and thousands of internal links, links pulling in from other sources, etc. So I guess, Jim, maybe touching on that enterprise element. I mean, I know kind of some of the clients that you work with daily are companies with enterprise requirements. Usually mean things like how many languages is my site in? Are we able to personalize? Are we able to localize? This kind of thing. Maybe you can just talk around how HubSpot is not only perhaps that user-friendly tool for a marketer SEO, but actually as we go, as HubSpot continues to go kind of more towards the higher end of the mid-market into the kind of enterprise space. How is HubSpot set up if you are looking for that, multi-region, multi-language, multi-localization?
Yes, I mean, global websites have kind of historically been a challenge from an SEO perspective. When you're translating content and it's in a different language, it's a lot easier for search engines to kind of know which audience to show that to. But where you've got things like an English site for the US market, one for Canada, one for the UK, from a best practice perspective, having a different page for each of those regions makes sense because you can tailor that for that audience. You've got different currencies, you might have different product availabilities, there may be different services you offer for those markets. So, there's that need to have different pages and a unique page for each region. But then a search engine doesn't know that, and a search engine is going to struggle to understand exactly which content to show where. So this is where we use a piece of code called a hreflang tag, and essentially you put it on the page in the code and you say this piece of content is intended for this language and this region, but also here are all the other variants and here are all the regions and languages they're intended for. So if you're having to do this quite manually, you can imagine this would be extremely difficult to keep, well, first of all to deploy, but then to keep updated. You've got to specify exactly which URLs are equivalents of each other. You've got to make sure your language coding is uniform and it's the format that search engines understand. But then if you've got URLs that are different in different regions, all of that inconsistency can be quite hard to stay on top of. If you've got a URL in one region changes or a page goes down, someone's got to go and edit all of the hreflang tags. We've had sites on other CMSs that we've worked with where this has been a massive job to do, and all the time that it's not resolved, you end up in situations like, the Singapore page is not getting any organic traffic because for all of the keywords it wants to rank for, the main US site is taking all of that traffic. So, it can really impact traffic, leads, SNIS for these different regional offices, regional teams of an enterprise company. Now, I'm making it sound like a big deal, but actually, this is my favorite part of HubSpot because they made it simple. You have a system where you have your core page, say your English US page, and then you just create a variant of it, and you group these two pages together. You specify what languages and what regions they're for, and you're doing all of this in the main kind of front end of HubSpot, and it's very kind of clear how pages are grouped together. But by doing this, you're joining all of these pages up into groups, and HubSpot's doing all of the back end coding for you. And it really is just a set it and forget it system. It even aligns to a language switcher, which is a whole other piece of code that other websites have struggled to get up and running. And so that you can, if I'm on the English US page, I want to switch to the German page, I just click a button and I'm taken directly there. I'm not taken to the home page to restart my journey and find my way back to that product I was looking at. I'm taken straight to the source of where I want to go. So yeah, it's such a huge time saver and efficiency saver from an SEO perspective for something that is very easy to use within HubSpot without any SEO knowledge. And I imagine there are marketers using it without knowing why or what it's actually powering in the back end of the CMS.
Yeah, I must admit, Joe, I absolutely loved your comment around this is your favourite part of HubSpot, because it's been, we've had our CEO Darren on the podcast. We've had people from our marketing consulting team talking about the amazing AI tools and the kind of customer journey reporting and this kind of thing. It's refreshing to have someone hreflang tags being a thing that kind of brings you joy in your particular position. But I guess on a serious note though, again, being someone who has used this for our own website at Huble, albeit for multiple clients as well, I think the highlight that I want to just focus on is that this isn't just for translating text and translating content, right? Because ultimately, to an extent, Google does this for you. If you go on a website page and it's not in the language that you're used to reading, Google will have a stab at kind of translating that for you. The focus of it, I think, on top of the kind of back end coding and kind of telling Google where this page should be placed and where this page should be shown, is actually the ability to kind of localize your website pages. And you referenced a couple of bits around currency or product placement, this kind of stuff, which is extremely powerful for if we think of large companies. A really easy example may be that they need to slightly alter their product focus in EMEA compared to APAC because it's maybe a slightly different price sensitive market, or there's a requirement for a product over others. There may be different legal or this kind of thing rules to imply that a product is more important than another, and that is so much more than just purely translating a website page. I guess, how do you see it with your clients in terms of the need and the want and the requirement to localize over just purely translate content from A to B?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that to begin with, HubSpot gives you that framework to very quickly roll out these regional sites. But, it's definitely not the case that the job is done once you've done that. As you said, like the real return on investment of time and effort and budget is going to be when you've actually then gone and updated that content for that audience. We've done it in the past for clients, putting in local references if they've got bricks and mortar stores, having directions to those stores included, that kind of thing. But also just sort of really tailoring it to the pain points of that buyer persona is really just taking that marketing to the next level. And when we've done it, we've seen much better results for it. It's always a capacity thing. It's trying to work out have you got capacity for that. But I feel like because HubSpot enables people without that SEO knowledge to do good things for SEO, it means that the team of people who can positively impact the SEO of a website is much, much larger. And you're not just, if you're head of SEO for a global company, you might have a small team of people working for you, but it means you can expand your kind of wider influence over a much larger part of your business. And if you can put that strategy in place at the beginning and show people how to do things that are SEO positive, they can do that in their day-to-day job, and that can free up your your SEO director, your SEO team's time to work on other projects, on bigger things or bigger initiatives, or as you said, with AI, exploring how to use that and take the site to the next level. But it requires that user friendliness, because not everyone has coding knowledge, not everyone has that drive or kind of passion for SEO. So having these sort of processes in place that make it easy or really user friendly just, I think, makes such a huge difference. And that's where the HubSpot platform takes things beyond just pure how well coded is this page, how quickly does it load, that kind of things. HubSpot does do all of those things, but I think if you compare it in a bubble against a very basic WordPress page, you'll see what a lot of the things that those people in the forums that you were talking about at the beginning complain about. But I really do think you need to sort of widen the mindset to look at the wider world of marketing, of customer service, of buyer personas, and talking to that audience, and really creating a website that solves for the customer, rather than just creating a website that ticks all of the boxes that Google says it's looking for in order to rank a page.
Yeah, and I think what you're highlighting, Jim, ultimately is kind of it's a huge saver in hours worked. In terms of i.e. a team spending a ton of hours maybe on a WordPress site. Again, we're using WordPress as the example today. It's one of many CMSs that obviously HubSpot goes up against. But it's kind of the go-to comparison for a tool where you can waste, for lack of a better term, a ton of hours in WordPress getting it to a point where from an SEO perspective, HubSpot would do out of the box using its tools and features within play. Now, ultimately what you're highlighting is that if you have a team, whether it's a small team and it's a one-person marketing team who's trying to do the best they can to rank as well as they can, create as much content as they can, or it's a team, with a kind of, maybe there's 3 or 4 content marketers, like an SEO, lead, and maybe people focusing on linking and backlinks and the PR side of things a little bit more. Ultimately, whether you're that small or large team, using HubSpot allows you to get out of the mess of trying to make sure that the technical setup is correct and actually get into a world of what is working, what isn't, how can we identify, where the opportunities are, and actually focus on the strategy and, maybe some of the execution, rather than just kind of focus on trying to make sure that A is connected to B to ensure that Google is reading everything correctly. Is that a fair kind of summary of where we're at today?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, that time that you're saving, you can then spend on doing more with that content, tailoring it, creating content that's, as you said, solves for the customer. Because ultimately, regardless of all the things that Google is looking at for its algorithm when it chooses to rank a website, the most important thing is when people have clicked through to your site, do they stay or do they go back to Google and look at something else or refine their search? Because if you're consistently answering the question, getting people to finish their search with you, then Google is knowing that it's solving for the customer and it's shown the right page, and over time that should improve in rankings. So ultimately it's the quality of your content that is going to do the most for your website, and it's not just from a rankings perspective, but also from a lead gen and business perspective. It's no good writing something that will rank well if it doesn't actually drive people to engage with your brand and convert. That's the best way to get the most ROI from SEO, in my opinion.
And Jim, I guess one of the things that comes to mind to kind of hearing you talking about all this is almost like a mindset shift for SEO and kind of your website, away from that idea of you spend, it's the old school kind of growth-driven design strategy, right? Of you move away from the idea that you spend a year trying to build a new website, make sure that all of your redirects, headers, H1s, 2s, href length tags, etc., all in place, and then do a huge launch, and then you leave it for 2 years, and then do that again on the 3rd year, and it's a vicious cycle of kind of website development and relaunches. The way that HubSpot seems to be set up is a mindset shift that moves you towards kind of small incremental changes weekly or monthly to actually improve your performance kind of over that time period. What tools, again, like you've highlighted a lot around how HubSpot kind of makes it very easy for you to get things right. What tools does HubSpot have maybe on the kind of flip side of, okay, everything's right, everything's set up, now what can I kind of do next in order to try and take things to the next level?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, HubSpot really pushed, from an SEO perspective, the concept of topic clusters. It wasn't a new concept in the world of SEO. There was people had talked about like hub and spoke and things, but essentially the idea that you shouldn't just have one piece of content on a particular keyword if you are wanting to be seen as a thought leader on that topic. Especially with very highly competitive, high volume keywords, a single page is not going to really compete. So they've been pushing the whole kind of topic cluster model, the idea of building a pillar page on a broad topic and then having lots of individual pieces of cluster content, whether that's blog posts or videos or ebooks or guides or whatever it is. All of that content linking off from the pillar page and then coming back, links going back to that pillar page to kind of increase its authority and its weight within the website. They kind of rolled that out as a concept and pushed out a lot of content, basically building their own topic cluster about topic clusters. But also behind all that was the tools to allow you to do this and to have a kind of a strategy around it, but also to then also report on the effectiveness of that work that you were doing. So you've got a topic cluster tool that helps you find the keywords you want to write about, build those into a visual pillar page topic cluster structure. As you write that content, you attach the URLs of those pages to your report, and it will tell you whether you've got those links going in between that content. And all of this is really just so that at the end of the day you can segment that into a report that says, we wrote all of this content, here are all the contacts that were influenced by it, all of the traffic it received, and ultimately if people are submitting on forms and making purchases, how much money we made off the back of it. So yeah, it's a really great tool for allowing you to plan, implement, measure the result of your content strategy using the topic cluster approach. And again, as you said, it's built in a way that you don't need coding to manage them. It's all built in and easy to use.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jim, I couldn't let the opportunity pass without talking about AI. Given where we are in November 2023, as we HubSpot recently at Inbound kind of introduced the ability to do things like have AI generate content, which obviously isn't a new thing in terms of where we've come from over the last 6 months, but even generate things like meta descriptions, like preview text, subject lines for emails, this kind of stuff. From a I've spoken with Darren, our CEO, on this podcast before around the thinking around how you create content, using tools like ChatGPT or Jasper or Phrase or something like this, and the balance of the human element against the effectiveness and efficiency you gain from using AI. Where do you see kind of the HubSpot play, I suppose, in terms of the ability to use AI within the tool to make it more effective and efficient for HubSpot users to create content, website pages, etc. But balance that against there's a million people out there doing the same thing as you. How do you stand out? So I guess I'm just wondering, maybe 6 months ahead, a year ahead, 5 years ahead, how do you see the role of SEO evolving in or inside or outside of the HubSpot tool?
Okay, so I just want to take it back one step and just talk a little bit about Google and AI content, because when ChatGPT first came out, immediately the SEO community were like, great, we can write loads of content really quickly. What does Google say about this? And Google's response was basically, it will rank content that is most useful for the user, regardless of whether a human or a robot wrote it. A lot of people took that to mean, great, I can create AI content and it will rank and Google won't do anything about it. Now, I personally feel that Google said that to cover itself, so that somebody can't go, I did a bit of AI content and look, you said it wouldn't rank number one, and it is. So that's why they never came out and said AI content won't rank or AI content will be penalized. However, if you read a lot of content that's generated by AI, it's quite, especially when you start talking about deeper topics, it's quite obvious when something has been written. And I know AI will progress and get better, but ultimately it is just sort of summarizing what's already out there on the web. So it's not really adding anything new to the topic. So I think ultimately you can use AI to pull your content together and do your research, but it will always need that extra bit of human tailoring, human expertise, human experience added to it. Otherwise, what are you adding to the conversation that isn't already ranking and online already? In terms of how HubSpot is going to use it, I think it is going to continue to do that philosophy that we've talked about today, which is around making the time-consuming things easier and quicker, so you can spend more time doing the important things, the things that really drive things forward. So yeah, as you said, I think it's going to be great for generating initial ideas, initial social. You write a piece of content and it will create 3 social posts to go along with it, and you can tweak them based on all these different factors. But yeah, I think it's going to go into all of those admin-y things that you need to do day to day as a marketer. It's going to find ways of making those more efficient. in the same way as a lot of the tools and features that it has already from an SEO perspective are making it a lot easier for marketers and SEOs to do their job. And then the final thing as well, I think reporting as well, data analytics. Some of the SEO tools we now have AI assistants. So where you'd look at a graph and interpret the data, it's already pulling out statistics that it think might be interesting, like X number of keywords ranked in the top 10 this month compared to last month, or we saw this keyword group or this competitor suddenly increase or decrease in performance. I'm sure there are things within HubSpot's analytics tool framework. I would be surprised if they didn't go down that route of creating kind of automated commentary for dashboards and things. I've no evidence that they're working on this at the moment, but just seeing the way that GA4 has gone, SEMrush, I think it's probably in the pipeline at some point, somewhere along the way.
Okay, we'll have to have this discussion in maybe 12 months' time after a year of product development and see where we stand.
Yes, but if it's not being worked on, we'll submit it as an idea to their forum and see if we can get some momentum behind it.
Absolutely. Jim, I think that brings us to a wrap. Thank you ever so much for joining us on the Evolving HubSpot podcast. Thank you to all of our listeners. As ever, I please encourage you to like, subscribe, and share where possible. But thank you for joining. And Jim, again, thank you for joining and enlightening us with your SEO knowledge, SEO experience, and I guess what's coming up in the world of SEO over the next few months.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a really good time. Thanks.